Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April edition of the Autocall Academy webcast. My name is Peter Ryan, and I am the marketing coordinator for Autocall products throughout the world, and I'll be hosting and moderating the session with you today. I'm sure many of you have been on these sessions before and are familiar with how the whole session works. So let's get started. As you know, as you can tell, we are in a different platform today. We're using Teams Live as opposed to the Citrix platform that we tried out last time. We think Teams Live works actually a lot more reliably and easily. So we're in the session. Everybody is muted. So unfortunately with Teams Live, you can't ask a live question. However, there is a Q&A window. So if you look at your controls, there's the little bubble with the question, and you can go ahead and ask written questions at any time during the presentation. We'll be monitoring that queue, and we'll be answering questions, and then we'll also have time for Q&A at the end of the session, where all the presenters will be available to address any questions, comments that you have. As a reminder, as usual, this session is being recorded, and everything is going to be wrapped up and then posted into the Autocall website. So you'll be able to download the video and watch it via YouTube probably tomorrow, maybe Monday, probably tomorrow, and you can certainly share that with anybody who wasn't able to make the section to make this presentation today. So for today's agenda, I think we've got a really good mix of topics. First of all, we have the introduction to the ES touchscreen display. I know this is a product that's been really eagerly awaited, and we're going to tell you a lot more about it today. And we're also going to go through an introduction to the TrueSight Workstation family of products that's going to be launching in the near future. Version 6.02, which is a great enhancement to the TrueSight Workstation, and then a brand new thing called a BSIU. And then for the order and logistics section of the show, we have some great updates to the Navigator order processing platform, which Jason Crouch is going to take you through, which I think are really exciting. And then some more enhancements that have been added to the Zap platform. So that's what we have on tap for you today. Without further introduction, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to our first set of presenters, Dan Govin and Dan Bashaw, to take you in through the new touchscreen display.
Thanks a lot, Peter, and welcome everybody on the other end of the internet. Thank you for joining this Teams meeting today. I hope you find it productive and informative. It's my great pleasure to be joined by Dan Bashaw. Both of us will be going over the ES touchscreen display and some of the key features and benefits of that product line. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right into the next slide. All right, so actually, the first question is usually, when is it being launched? So we just received our ULC approval, and we've got the project team now working diligently to try to get safety stock built and all the the final tasks that we need to get things ready for the launch itself. So we do expect to launch this in May. So about a month, sometime in the month of May. So a little more than a month away, or about a month away. We hope to be launching this to the Autocall channel. So all you folks should be able to get access to the nice new ES touchscreen display. So what is the ES touchscreen display? What are we actually going to be launching as far as that product enhancement? The first is a nice brand new fresh color touchscreen display for the 4100 ES and 4010 ES control units. So you can see that photo on the right. It's a larger screen, but very similar in operation and look and feel to the 4007 ES display, for those of you that are familiar with that. So it's an 8-inch diagonal display versus a 4.3 inch on the 4007 ES. And this gives us a significant improvement over an enhancement to the both the 4010 ES and 4100 ES 2x40 and info alarm displays that we have today. It will be able to display up to 8 events simultaneously without scrolling, and the amount of information on the screen vastly reduces the amount of scrolling that you need to do, especially when compared to a 2x40 display, to get access to multiple events or information associated with an event or a point on the system. In addition to that, this is a unique key difference from the 4007 ES display. When you look at that display on the bottom, you can see the colored icons that we the standard icons for fire, priority 2, supervisory, trouble, acknowledge, and reset. And the 4070S, those are not functional switches or functions. You have to actually touch the button above it on the touchscreen display to be able to perform those functions. So with the ES touchscreen display for 4100 and 4010ES, you will have the option of using either the soft key that's above it, just like the 4070S, or if you press on those icons, those are hard keys that'll be able to perform those functions. So that gives a much higher level of reliability in case the touchscreen goes down. People get concerned. What if it fails? You'll still have those hard keys, and vice versa. If the hard keys for some reason would fail, you've got redundancy on the touchscreen display. So that's a key functional difference from the 4070S. And we intend to support multiple languages. Traditionally, we've always supported English and French with all the fire alarm control units that we have in the product line. And we're now going to expand that to additional languages that we'll get into more detail later. This is also compliant with all local requirements, including ULC. So those of you that are in Canada are familiar with the requirement that the ULC standard has that says you have to be able to be capable of displaying 8 zones of alarm simultaneously. And up until now, even with the info alarm display, we were always required to add additional hardware for LED controllers and LED modules to be able to provide that 8 simultaneous event display. Now we'll be able to meet that functionality directly with the ES touchscreen display, so you don't need the LEDs and the LED controllers anymore. So that's going to be a great benefit, especially in the Canadian market. And then finally, it offers a consistent user interface across all our ES family of panels now. So that's a good segue into the next slide. If you could go to the next slide. So if you take a look. So now when we look across all the panels, starting on the left with a 4100 ES, followed by the 4010 ES, and then the 4070 ES panels, you can see we've got a consistent user look and feel and user interface across all the ES family of products. And then for our remote enunciators, we are going to also include a new remote ES touchscreen display. It's going to be in virtually the same cabinet, a standalone cabinet that we use for info alarm. So it's going to be a low profile standalone cabinet for the 4100 and 4010 ES that's going to have the larger touchscreen display. And of course, we already have the smaller remote touchscreen enunciator for the 4070 ES. So very similar operation. Anybody that, if you have all touchscreen displays in all your panels, you're gonna be able to pretty much move from one to the other without really needing any additional training or knowledge or experience to be able to know how to use one user interface versus the other. And in addition to that, for the remote enunciator for the 4100 and 4010 ES, so the remote ES touchscreen display enunciators, will be able to vector individual points to individual enunciators. So if a specific location only wants to see points, often in hospitals, the nurses station, they may have an enunciator. They only want to see the points that are specific to the area that they serve. We'll be capable of vectoring points individually to individual enunciators. That capability does not exist on 4070 ES. Next slide. So a little more detail on the new ES touchscreen display. Similar to info alarm, you'll have the ability for each individual type of event, fire, priority 2, trouble, supervisory. You'll be able to program the panel to display. You'll have 3 different choices, what type of display that you want. So you could display the first and most recent event at the top of the display, highlighting those 2 events. And that would be followed by a list of the first 6 events in the system, up to 6 events if you had more points active either in alarm, trouble, in any of the event categories. Or you could have just the most recent event at the top, and that would be followed by a list of the first 7 events that came in that event category. Or you can just simply have it display the first 8 events. And when we say events, we did add, with the release of the ES touchscreen display, we added the capability to do zone programming in the 4100 ES and 4010 ES. That capability does exist in 4007 ES today, but it is the first time we're actually getting that functionality in the 4100 ES and the 4010 ES. And that allows you to take groups of points. If a customer only wants to see zones, or in the ULC example, where they want 8 zones of alarm, not 8 points, but 8 zones, we'll be able to program, all the points into a zone and display just the zone on the panel. It will tell you if you've got multiple points in alarm, then you can just touch the screen for the point, for the zone that's being displayed, or any zone that is that's active and displayed. If you just touch it, it'll then drill down into all the individual points that are active within that zone. So really nice feature, and we're excited about adding that to the ES panels. And then the soft keys above the icon symbols for each event will include the quantity of active points in each of the event categories. So you'll always know how many active events you have. The touchscreen is a resistive touchscreen technology, which allows us to be used with gloves, which is often a concern with the fire department. Am I going to be able to operate this with the gloves on? The resistive touchscreen technology is the only one that allows that. So we've used the resistive touchscreen technology for the ES touchscreen display, so we can support that requirement. And then we'll have the ability to pull in a custom background that allows you to personalize it, to the customers, whatever the customer wants to see on that screen when the system is normal and there's no active events in the system. So they can highlight their company logo, or put contact information on there, or both, whatever custom file that they want to create on their own. We'll be able to pull it in, and there are certain specifications for that file import. But we can now display a nice, color touchscreen graphic that highlights and promotes the company's brand, or whatever they want that to display. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to support multiple languages. You can, like InfoAlarm, switch between any 2 languages. You can install up to 2 languages in a panel, and with the push of a button, you can switch from one language to the other on the fly. So the languages that we plan to support for launch are English, Canadian French, Arabic, Latin American Spanish, and Portuguese. And those language translation files will all be downloadable from the tech support website. And we're also looking into supporting Hebrew and traditional Chinese, and those will follow. So with the remote touchscreen, we already talked about that. Pretty much it's an exact duplicate replica of the user interface on the control unit. So it will mimic the functionality. You can do 100% of what you could do on the front panel with the remote display. It does have it's in a keyed lock cabinet, so it does require a B key, as we know it, to unlock the door to get. So it has secured access it's secured against unauthorized access. And then with your passcodes, you can actually go in and perform any function, like I say, that you could with the front panel that may be passcode protected, such as enabling and disabling points and so on. So here again, great looking, much better than a 2x40 or an InfoAlarm annunciator that you would normally have in your lobby or your public areas. This is just a cool looking, awesome display, compared to anything we've had up to now. Next slide. This will just give you a little, I've talked about the screen, so this is just kind of little closer look, right? So you can see at the top, on the one on the left-hand side, that's a screen that's programmed to display the first and most recent event. And then down below, so the first 2 events you see on the top, they're marked. You may not be able to read it really well, but the first one has a little flag on the right-hand side that says first, and then the next one says most recent, and then underneath that, you could have up to 6 active events that would display. And then down below, you can see the soft keys, and down below the description, it'll display the number of active events in that category for each of the event categories that we have. Then on the right-hand side, there's 7 programmable, programmable soft keys to allow functionality that, whatever the customer decides they need. In this case, we show in control. In control is typically something where if you have multiple user interfaces and you only want one to be in control at a time, you can program a control button to request control and take control. The language switch, so if you want to switch between languages, that's another function that you could use for one of those, manual evac, lamp test, enable, disable, points, whatever you would want to do, you could program those buttons for that. And then on the right-hand side, that's an example of having a trouble event screen that's programmed to just display the first 8 events. And you can see on both screens, there's a scroll, the scroll buttons, up and down arrows. On the left-hand side, they're grayed out because there's only 2 events. But on the trouble screen, you can see they're not grayed out. They're live, which means there's more. In this case, it says there's 10 trouble events in the system. So now those scroll keys will become active so that you can scroll up and down through the list real easily to view all the points in the list. And then the next screen just gives you 2 more examples. Waiting for the next, here it comes. So, the alarm history log. So here again, a lot more information at a glance, a lot less scrolling that you need to do. So you can see multiple events in the history log and easily scroll up and down if you have to. And then some of these screens have context sensitive buttons. So this is with the example of the alarm history log, you can see on the bottom right-hand section of the screen that has the history log, there's a clear button, right? So if you're logged in at the right access level, it'll give you the ability right on the screen to just click the clear button and allow you to clear the history log. And then finally, on the right-hand side, there's an example of the point details. So if you're going to call up the details, a technician typically may want to, or even an end user, depending on, if they're a heavy user of their system, they may want to look up point detail. Well, typically with a 2x40 display, you're going to have to scroll for every 2 lines. You're going to have to scroll to the next screen, scroll to the next screen, scroll to the next screen. Now you get all the point details, at a glance, right? So very excited about this new display, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Bashaw, who's going to cover some of the key value propositions and benefits of the ES touchscreen display. So Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Dan. All right, bear with me one sec. I get queued out here. Here we go. All right, so you might want to ask yourself, how does this new product really help me? And we kind of look at it from 3 different categories. So from sales, from a technical perspective, as well as, our end users, our customers, going to be looking at this every day. So from a sales perspective, we get the opportunity to meet more project specifications, right? A lot more specific screen displays and color. This allows us to meet and or exceed that specification that's out there. We looked at reducing the amount of part numbers, right? We have a ton of part numbers that are out there. So with this new display, we have greatly reduced the amount of part numbers to reduce confusion and simplify the process of ordering what you want, right? And again, like Dan mentioned before, this is one common user interface, right? So when we talk about our product line, we're symmetrical across the board. And then again, supported languages, so the multi-language switch capability, just like we had before with the info alarm at the touch of a button. And then of course, the ULC compliance means more wins for those Canadian folks that are out there, right? So no more of the additional LED requirements. We're built in and we're compliant out the gate. Now we look from a technical perspective, this is pretty huge here, right? More download options, real-time download, status display. We're reducing tech time, labor, which of course is the biggest cost on a project, and than the info alarm, right? There was a lot of challenges and headaches when it came to going and doing the FUI bootloader. We don't have that issue anymore, right? So We've come up with a lot more, let's call it modern technology, bringing everything up to date, new design, less hassle, as well as making sure we have those upgrade kits available for those existing info alarms that are out there, and programming tools built in the programmer to simplify that installation, right, in those existing cabinets. So when we take a look at an end user or customer perspective, we want to make sure that we do have that consistent touchscreen display, right? This is the face of Autocall. This is what our customer is going to see and immediately recognize that this is an Autocall system. Simple for operators to learn and use. It avoids confusion by both the soft and the hard keys, right? So we have another layer that's built in where those hard keys will actually continue to operate even if the touchscreen goes out. So this is the latest technology mentioned before, increased life cycle. It's modern, attractive. It takes that, it's pretty slick when you look it out and walk into a building in the lobby and would see this on the wall, right? Next slide, please. So you heard me mention info alarm, right? How does it compare to info alarm? Well, our info alarm, as you know, was a monochrome display. You know, we're kind of comparing current TVs on the wall to our old two black and white televisions, right? It's night and day, right? No touch screen. We have touch screen. You'll notice one of the difference, we still have the same amount of buttons, the 7 buttons. The only thing we're giving up are those few LEDs at the top. But look at everything that we're gaining from that aspect, right? So it looks like it's a brand new technical, we'll call it technological or current technology, which is on the wall. It's more intuitive from the sake of, I don't have just these random buttons that sitting across the side of the display, and we're trying to look at, you know, what looks like old technology. So the idea is with those hard and soft buttons, we're minimizing any type of confusion to how to operate. It's really easy when you go and look up, you see the LED, I can push that hard button or right up above and push that acknowledge button directly up above that condition. We have more options as far as well as the progress display. We're doing downloads, which can be Ethernet, RUI, for those that don't know, remote unit interface or old 485 connections, and or a USB device. So that download progress status is always going to be displayed no matter which route you go. And of course, as Dan also mentioned before, we do support the wide array of languages that he went through and listed. And those language files will be available to be downloaded from technical support website. And as any more come out in the future, they will be there as well. So for those that have info alarm or plan info alarm, it's at the end of its lifespan and will be completely discontinued soon. So if you have something that you haven't ordered yet, this would be a great thing to consider transitioning to prior to releasing or ordering that material if it's not too late. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we talked everything about being easy, right? Cost effective. Well, what control units can I upgrade? What are those rules, or what are the conditions for me to do so? So from a 4100 ES, the 2x40 or info alarm, they can be upgraded to the ES touchscreen display. Just have to make sure that we have that software Rev 601 or higher in the panel, and there is an upgrade kit for it, and you're done. Talking about legacy panels that are out there. Now, the legacy panels, obviously from an Autocall perspective, may not exist, but however, understanding that that support that we've always maintained as an organization is always going to be backwards and forwards compatible, and the same rules apply, version 6.01 or higher, and is not available for any of the really, you know, older basic panels that are on the wall. From a 4010 perspective, it's not compatible with the standard 4010 2x40 display. Okay, so I'll say again, it's not compatible with our standard 2x40 4010 ES display, but it is compatible with those existing 4010s that are out there that have that info alarm display. and must be upgraded to that Rev 601 or higher, just like the 4100 ES. Now, remote ES touchscreens are compatible with those 4010 ES panels that have the 2x40 displays that I referenced. We can't do at the head end, but we can put those remote displays out in the field and LCD enunciators if all the languages are ASC2 encoded. So the customers can have this latest technology without having to replace their control units, right? If we don't replace their control unit at the head end, we can still do that remote touchscreen display and upgrade that software. Next slide, please. Okay, so going back to that same place we started, right, between sales, technical, and our end-using customers. Again, so from a sales perspective, we're offering a great-looking, easy-to-use panel and enunciator with that consistent interface across all three main models. We want to have the latest technology that's out there. We're always working on making things better. So this is the latest technology which is out there, better fault tolerance, reduced operator training, and that consistency across the product line. We want to be able to upgrade those existing systems without having to replace the complete control units. We've got options that are available for that. And again, designing and bidding those systems more easily with less labor than what it would take with the info alarm. So, you know, again, if those on the call that are familiar with info alarm, you could get to the process of downloading and updating and then crash and then having to start over again. And it could get very frustrating. So that nightmare is gone. Okay, so it's really significant. Now, from a technical standpoint, again, hey, no more guesswork. We have a download status, so we know exactly where it's at in the download, and it's always going to be displayed. We can do that Ethernet remote unit interface or RUI download, as well as USB right on the display itself, right? It's right on the inside. The boot system fault tolerance with hard and soft key redundancy. So again, if that display goes out, for whatever reason, gets cracked, some kind of miracle happens there from a damage perspective, those hard keys are always going to work. And as Dan mentioned before, it's also touch resistive technology. So whether we're wearing gloves or a firefighter responding wearing gloves, it will still continue to operate with those gloves on. And then, of course, peace of mind with that latest technology that has been invested in there. Okay. So finally, the customer perspective, it needs to be aesthetically pleasing, right? It needs to look good, and it does, right? It's easy to use. It's color coded based on condition. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I'll even add another component from a technical standpoint. You know, we have the priority 2 option, which is on there that can be changed to CO and then change that LED to blue, right? So when we have CO detectors out in the field, we don't have to call them priority 2. And that's another great feature which is already built into that display. So we'll reduce operator training and enable a faster response. We're going to have that more fault tolerant system. We're going to increase and lengthen that life cycle for the system. You know, we can upgrade control units as budget and time permits. We can just add remote displays, or maybe we'll be able to upgrade the head end. Whatever makes sense for the customer, we can work to get them this latest technology on the wall. Okay, and last but not least, more language options and dual language support to continually meet that bilingual requirements. So aesthetically appealing, latest technology, cost-effective upgrades, and bottom line really comes down to high reliability. I am really excited about this product. If you can't pick it out of my tone there, so okay, go ahead, Peter.
Hello, Team Autocall. I'm Mike Stone, field sales engineer for the Northwest area, and I've got some upgrades, updates to the TSW system to share with you today that I'm pretty excited for. So let's jump right into TrueSight Workstation version 6.02. The absolute headline is our old green line on a black background is gone. It's not gone, it's still available, but we've got a new 3D option that just really brings the TSW into the 21st century. You can see on the screen there, it's a fully modern, fully three-dimensional walls, the whole deal. It looks really, really good. Much more in line with things your building engineers are used to seeing in like their building automation, Metasys type systems. Along with that, we've got new tools that make screen editing easier on the fly. If you've ever sent a technician to a site with a TSW, you know that they're going to spend some extra time with those screen editing tools, getting the new devices or whatever those changes were made and loaded into the system. Our new tools are going to make that easier, more time effective. We've also got expanded DACR compatibility that I'm going to touch on, and some new features for the remote clients. After I get through with those things, Paul Nelson's going to talk about software licenses and a couple other things coming up. So can we get the next slide, please?
Yeah, sorry, Mike, just to interrupt there, but just as a quick notice, these are brand new. I know you haven't seen some of these pictures. These are the ones that we just took from a marketing team. And if you look at the display, the one on the left is a regular display. You see the base on the right is different. That's the touch screen.
Okay.
So
yeah,
there's one of each in there. I just wanted to pull that out because I know there's going to be questions about the touch screen.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Yeah, so you'll see two different monitors on the graphic there. One of those is standard. One of those is touch screen. On the lower image there, you can see the new floor plan and how much better that thing looks than the old, AutoCAD looking one-line diagram sort of scenario. So this TSW is really, it's the biggest and best thing we've got, right? When you're showing this to customers, you're bringing the big guns, and now we've got screens and backgrounds and graphics that match the capabilities of what this thing can do as a fire alarm component. We want it to look the part as well as having the power to go along with it. It can help, just like with the touchscreen. We want to make these more user-friendly, more accessible, so that people in different levels throughout your customers can interact with them in useful ways. And the new screens are going to help with that. Information will be easier to process, easier to understand, and easier to use for your customers. And again, they've got all kinds of customization. Each user, so there are multiple people in facilities, big and complex enough to have a TSW. There are multiple people involved in needing visibility into the fire alarm system, and each of those different people is going to want different things from it. We have new customization options that allow them to get exactly what they need as far as information in the fire alarm system. And then again, new programming tools save technician time. We know that technician time is one of the most highly prized assets you have, and we're making tools to give you back more of that. We've also added the option for PNG file imports. So traditionally, if you wanted to add a picture to use as part of your graphics scheme, it had to be a bitmap. We can now use PNG, which comes with some technological benefits, but that starts to get really, really nitty gritty. Next slide, please. Okay. At first blush, this seems like a minor iterative update, right? We've added two new receiver models to our lineup of DACR compatibility. But I'm excited to talk to you about this because I'm excited in general about the DACR. DACR stands for Digital Alarm Communicator Receiver. It's the receiving end of the DACT or DACT that goes in the fire panel. And basically, this DACR compatibility allows us to network for all intents and purposes with non-Autocall panels. if you've got a campus that has a mishmash of different panels and they want visibility from a central point, we can accomplish that with DACR. Essentially, the TSW becomes the head end, and all of the points that come across via contact ID come to the DACR. They come into the TSW, and we can display them just like they were network points. So you can see there are a handful of models there, lots of flexibility, lots of options. The AES IntelliNet specifically is just incredibly useful. You can have your customers setting up their own AES mesh network and taking control from their TSW of their whole fire alarm network, having full visibility, know exactly what's going on. This is something that I just think is criminally underused in the field, is the DACR capability. So if you've got customers that have multiple panels from different manufacturers and they want to be able to see everything, let's talk to them about DACR, because it's powerful, it's awesome, and we can do really, really cool things with it. Next slide, please. Again, in the vein of power users, customers who have large systems, complex facilities, big networks, a lot of times they've got multiple stakeholders who all want to be informed and involved with what's happening with the fire alarm system. And because it would not be particularly cost effective to put a TSW in every single office, we have the remote client. But when the people involved need uninterrupted, reliable visibility into what's going on with the system, we now have the option to set up those remote clients to auto connect to various TSWs. So the technician programs the system, assigns primary and secondary servers for each client, and that way, if for some reason one of the TSWs were to fail, it would automatically connect to the other TSW, and the person sitting in front of the client doesn't lose connection or visibility of the fire alarm system. So another great option for your very mission critical customers who need to have visibility of the fire alarm systems, our new client failover option. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul Nelson, who's got a few other new features and things for the TSW. Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Mike. Very nicely covered the new features and benefits of TSW 602. So with a major investment in software, we find that many customers want to make sure that they protect their investment. They protect that investment not only against becoming quickly out of date or obsolete, but as with any software, they want to make sure that that software is protected against outside attacks or viruses or other threats, or even incompatibility with the operating system. What we were finding, though, in the field is that many TSWs would go years without updates. And that was because the only option to update was to purchase a costly major version upgrade. So to overcome that obstacle, we've offered a software maintenance agreement. What a software maintenance agreement does is it provides the user of a TSW consistent access to new releases. So for instance, when this annual release comes out about the same time next year, so we've got 6.03, let's say, with some new features, the customer that has an active software maintenance agreement would be able to obtain that upgrade for no charge, because it's included in their software maintenance agreement. So what this does is make sure that their software doesn't become out of date. It protects that initial investment, but it also gives them access to those new features that are introduced in each annual release of the software without a large investment. And what it does for each and every one of us is it adds to our recurring revenue stream. So It provides a service that we can offer on a continuous basis. So next slide. So in all, the TrueSight Workstation version 6.02 offers something for everybody. For the salespeople, you've noticed that the TSW looks better. It has those new enhanced 3D graphics. It's got the, we'll also be introducing a new 24-inch desktop monitor. So the look and the feel of the TSW is going to improve greatly. For salespeople too, the TSW is and always has been a really good solution to complex customer problems. Whether it's the need to have multiple operators who are relatively untrained be able to handle a complex fire alarm system with relative ease, through the guidance of graphics and automated scripts and things like that. It can solve that problem, but also going back to what Mike Stone was talking about, that DACR functionality. It's amazing how many times customers approach us with complex system integration issues that could be easily solved through that DACR feature. And again, we've got that recurring revenue that's possible through the software maintenance agreement, which solves a problem for our customers, keeps their software up to date, and also gives us an additional revenue stream to offer. From a technician standpoint, we're always listening to what our technicians are saying and making small adjustments to make things easier, more efficient in the field. Some things that we've refined this year are, for instance, when editing graphics, there was never an efficient undo feature. So if you took something too far, you couldn't get back to where you started. So implementing features like that, the fact that we can now reconnect a TSW after the job has been rebuilt without causing a trouble, that solves a lot of headaches in the field. So consistently refining things, keeping our technicians in mind. And from the customer standpoint, the TSW solves a lot of problems that exist on large systems. Whether it's a huge campus, where we can guide them to finding devices that need maintenance or finding devices in an emergency condition, or again, going back to the untrained operators, let's say they have security staff that's constantly turning over. Rather than having to retrain them all in depth on how to use the system, the TSW can make that system much, much more easy to operate. So in all, the version 6.02 offers, I believe, the right refinements, the right new features to keep us the most relevant, the most feature-rich, and the most powerful workstation on the market. Next slide. So next we'll be introducing the BSIU, which is something that's probably new to most folks in the audience, and we'll start by turning things over to Kirk Greenwood.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, Autocall partners out there, wherever you are in the country. I'm going to talk about this thing called the BSIU. It's a very new object that has just appeared in the code as well. So I'm going to talk about this. The TSW was very well covered by Mike and Paul, and basically what this is it's a TSW Lite. So let's get into it. What's a Building System Information Unit, or BSIU, and why is it important? BSIU is a computer used to enunciate and control a building fire alarm system. Control is the operative word there. So before 2019, NFPA 72 required that all equipment that controlled the fire alarm system had to be UL 864 listed. When it came to software products like the TSW, not only does the software have to be listed for UL 864, but the hardware had to be listed as well. So what that meant was very expensive computers had to be tested. Actually, they became expensive because they were tested and approved by UL. So all that testing and approving just drove up the cost of these computers. It included monitors, keyboards, mouses, everything that was associated with that software type controlled workstation for a firearm system. It had to be UL 864 listed. So NFPA 72 in 2019 creates this thing called the BSIU, which allows the use of UL 864 software to be used in a non-UL 864 listed computer. And basically there are some designs that need to be met, and we'll cover those in the upcoming slides. So basically what this BSIU does is it lowers the hardware costs and helps win more projects and allows more customers the use of a quote unquote TSW. So what's included in this launch? A new BSIU operation mode for the TSW workstation client software. It requires a version 6.02 and a BSIU feature code. That's when you're doing your ordering in Selection Navigator. You'll need to find the correct code to get the BSIU versus the TrueSight workstation. And it's part of the TrueSight workstation configurator job settings. It's new lower cost BSIU computer hardware. It's a not UL listed computer, UL 864 listed computer. So that will immediately bring the cost down of the computer. It meets all NFPA BSIU regulatory requirements, which we'll talk about in the next couple slides. And you can purchase the equipment locally. You don't have to buy it through us. We will be offering a computer to go with this, but you are able to order it locally, and even the customer's IT department might have their own computers that they want it on. There are a few requirements, and I'll talk about those next. So first of all, let's get back to what exactly does the code say about the BSIU. The first thing is there's a brand new definition in the 2019 edition of NFPA 72. And basically it's a computer-based electronic device that is intended to display building information and execute system control functions, including fire alarm information display and control. So what does the hardware need to have? What's required by the hardware, this computer that's non-UL 864 listed? It does need to meet the UL 60950 listing. So there is a certain listing. You can't just go to Billy Bob's Donut Shop and Computer Supply and pick up a CPU there and expect it to have this listing and be able to use. So there is a certain level of conformity, but not anywhere near as extensive as the 864. Some of the other code sections that apply to this, it's in chapter 23, 842 is, it's a brand new chapter in brand new section in chapter 23. This is only a little bit of it. There's actually about 3/4 of a page of the code that has the information on it as far as connecting it to the system and things like that. But these are the highlights. So as I said, the BSIU hardware has to meet UL 6095, and there's a couple other ANSI requirements there as well. And then the second section we want to highlight is where a BSIU provides control of the fire alarm system, the requirements of these sections shall also apply. And basically that talks about where the unit is mounted and things like that. The application software for the BSIU shall be listed by UL 864 for control units and accessories. So the software, we have that listing. That's not a problem. We've got that covered. So how and when can a non-UL 864 listed BSIU be used? This is also basically the synopsis that's, I'm sorry, next slide. This is where the code, some more of the code section is included in NFPA 72. So the BSIU must be located in the same room or space as the system fire alarm control unit. And the primary unit can be an FACU or an NDU. If it's a small network system communicating on an NDU, you can connect this to the NDU. The BSIU control operations are limited to the same ones that can be performed by the fire alarm control unit nearby. So basically, you can't do smoke control and functions where you're controlling fans and things like that that you normally could with a TSW. That would not be allowed in this type of unit. The BSIU and the control unit have to be independent of each other and must keep working if the other fails. Obviously, if the fire alarm control unit fails, that's where all the devices are connected to. The BSIU is not going to have the system continue to run. So basically, that's what the code sections on the right say about that stuff. I would say that for those of you that may not have a municipality or a state that has adopted the 2019 code, I can tell you that in the fire codes and the building codes, there's in the administration section, there's language that allows an AHJ to use a more current version of a standard if there's some new technology that may not be available in the older standards. So you'll have to work with your AHJs on that and make sure that they are okay with you using this. But that verbiage should give them the ability to do that. So work with your AHJ on it before you move forward. And I'm going to hand this back to Paul now, and he'll continue the next 2 slides. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kirk. Very, very nicely covered. So the BSIU is such an exciting product because it brings all of that power that we have in the TSW to a much more accessible package. And really one of the keys for that, or one of the main reasons that this is so affordable for small to mid-sized customers, is that they don't have to buy that big clunky UL864 hardware, that computer that really is loud, it's noisy, and let's face it, it's expensive because of the listings. So how do I order a BSIU? Well, because the product line is so much simpler, it's one part number. It's simply the TSW software itself is the only item that needs to be ordered. As far as the computer that's required, I know we talked about UL listings, but the UL listings that apply to the BSIU are just your ordinary everyday listings that you'll find on a commercial PC. So the PC that we used for testing is shown on the screen here. And as you can see, it's really nothing special. It's an everyday ordinary PC. So our recommendation is you see if we can get the customer's IT department to provide that PC. And we'll talk about the reason on the next slide. So to summarize the BSIU's capabilities, our request upon developing this new product was that we maintain every feature of the TSW that we possibly could. And in fact, that's what we've done. So only features of the TSW that NFPA 72 would not allow, and that UL864's a new provision for the BSIU software would not allow, those are the only things that you'll see missing. And it's things like the DACR functionality, the remote clients, and things like that. Because the principle behind it is that anything that would cause the operation of the system to rely on that BSIU being up and running, those were the things that weren't allowed, or anything that would flow information through the BSIU to be acted on by the fire alarm system. In fact, we have a nice podcast that's listed on the Autocall website, the Industry Roundtable with Roger Reiswig, that if you haven't listened to that yet, I'd recommend that you do. It'll really help you understand what the BSIU is. But going back to having the customer's IT department provide the computer, again, we go back to that software maintenance agreement, that opportunity for recurring revenue. The software maintenance agreement is a very powerful offering for the BSIU because typically these are computers that are maintained by the IT department. So those software maintenance agreements may even fall under the IT department's budget. But also these computers tend to be connected to the internet more so than the TSW with the UL864 hardware. So keeping that software up to date, current with the latest antivirus, current with the latest cybersecurity measures, That is even more important with the BSIU. So don't lose focus on that software maintenance agreement. We would recommend that every BSIU contain a software maintenance agreement. And in fact, we've included the first year of that agreement for free with the system. So to summarize, all of the power of the TSW that's allowable under the codes, and a much easier price entry point for our customers. So next slide, Peter. So next up, we'll turn our attention to Jason Crouch, and he'll walk us through some updates to Selection Navigator.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining. What I'd like to do is run through some changes that are going to be happening very soon in Selection Navigator with regards to how orders are going to be placed and processed in the back end. I know we kind of went through this and we highlighted this during our recent Autocall distributor conference, but the timing really now is perfect because this is planning to go live next week, and the actual change will be fairly seamless to the user. So just to have a bit of a recap, on our current process today, the orders that are sent go via email, and when you send that order through, you press that submit button in Selection Navigator, we send an email to our customer services entity, which is a group mailbox. The email attachments to that order, include the order PDF. If it's a 4100, we attach the layout files for manufacturing and any other files or documents that the actual user wishes to update to that that order. That email is also copied to recipients included in a CC list, and that CC list can be populated on the fly in the order UI, or if you're regularly copying the same set of folks on every order, that can also be set up on the account preferences screen. But ultimately, when that order is received today, it's manually entered by our CSR representative, into our ERP systems. And there's quite a lot that actually goes on behind the scenes, especially if it's configured product. So things like the TrueSight workstation that we've touched on in this webinar and 4100 are considered configured systems, and they have master controller parts or master parts and then a series of features, which is why they're configured. The new future process is going to be via direct via an API. So when you submit an order, when we go live next week, which will be we're actually going to go to promote on next Wednesday evening. So this will be live for customers next Thursday, a week from today. So when the order is actually submitted, only the project owner, which is what copies yourself on the order, and any recipients that are included in that CC list will get emailed. So you're going to receive by copy the same email as you do today. The only difference is the order is not going to go out to our customer services entity, and it's going to go direct into our Barn 560 ERP system. Any attachments, so the order PDF and 4100 ES placement files, are going to go to a secure server like a SharePoint drive, which can be accessed by manufacturing, our applications engineering, and also our customer services team, just in case you needed any changes to that order. And that new process will apply to direct Barn 560 Navigator accounts, which is currently our US customers. And this functionality is planned to extend to a wider audience next year when we're going to harmonize all of our ERP systems. So next slide, please, Peter. So I just want to highlight some changes that you will see. The good news is when this becomes live, there's no intervention required by the user. It's going to be a seamless experience. So what will happen is the actual session, when you go to that orders UI, you will create your orders in exactly the same manner as you do today. And then when you go to edit that order to populate the information, the session will determine by account and region of which UI to display. So for those folks that will have direct orders going to our ERP system, one of the things you'll notice is you'll see the bill to and the to fields, but they're going to be locked. So the bill to, the primary record in the ERP, is going to be used. And as I explained, the to field, which is used today for our customer services entity, is no longer required. The freight forwarder and the payment terms field will be locked, and you'll see some updates to the shipping methods as listed there: the ground, the priority overnight, the standard overnight, and the 2-day air. And also, just in addition to that, so there's going to be some changes, some sort of do's and don'ts. Now, Peter's got an announcement already queued up to go out next Thursday morning to all of our partners, which are going to be affected by this change. We will also post a banner in Selection Navigator, a green banner. You've probably seen them before at the top of the screen, with some detailed instructions on what to do. As far as configuring product and adding new systems to existing estimates. So, for example, when this goes live, we will no longer be accepting 4100 ES systems that are configured through Smart Panel. And as I say, we had to do a lot of changes in the back end to support what's currently done in customer services today. So we have to identify the master controller parts and which are the features. So there'll be some very, very simple step-by-step guides and instructions in the banner and in Peter's announcement that will go out next week. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Peter. So on the last note, I wanted to just talk about some updates to the new IDNAP point-to-point designer with the featured quick quote. So we recently went live with this tool, and we're already going out with a new version, which was posted